The cars are coming to life.
Here we go. Richards fires up the Boss Hemi. Made, of course, by Walt Austin with the coolest acronym in all of racing, WAR.
Absolutely.
So Cal Delucci getting ready to light off the Bahrain 1 Camaro burnout. Richards. Side by side out past the tree, as we were saying earlier, Keith. Cal ran at 368 this morning. First pass in the racetrack. What do you think we could see maybe from this car now that the sun has gone down?
Well, you know, first thing in the morning, the air is good. So you can't really say, oh, it was slick, it was heat of the day. It wasn't really heat of the day. The track was awesome this morning. The guys did great here. The titanium started prepping it, and he went 67. But this air, this is going to make power. This track is deadly. If it holds through 100 feet, I think you're going to see somewhere between a 65 and a 67.
And Richards was struggling a little bit with tire shake, trying to drive through that in the Mustang. He didn't really get a full run in. I think he had a 415, but that was even an early shutoff. Over there with the screw-blown combo. Again, the Boss Hemi and 2 screw supercharged cars, which is new for NHRA competition, even though that is technically outlaw pro mod for Cal, but he has been running a similar combo on the NHRA side of things.
Absolutely. And with Garrett Richards, I mean, that car is easily capable of low 80s on a regular basis. It's just getting through that shake zone, getting enough power and not overpowering. That's why we call it pro power management up here.
So Garrett Richards, again, his first appearance at Doorwarz since that Doorwarz win up against Shane Molinari back in 2019, as Khaled Al-Belushi, 4-time national event winner and NHRA Top Fuel competition, 3-time Arabian Drag Racing League champion, gets ready to turn on the bottom ball. And it is side-by-side threes. 371 with an 8. 205.95 miles an hour. Garrett Richards, no slouch either. 397 with an 8 at 196 over in the Lord Coato Parts lane.
You know, and that's a little softer than I thought both of them would be. I thought Khalid would be well into the 60s. Now, not, you know, everybody's got the eyes glued to the screens right now. Next pair. Justin's called a 64, by the way, earlier today. He's also got a bet with my boy, Junior Chap, who has hair past his shoulders. And if he runs anything in the 60s, my boy's got to get a haircut, which my wife will be ecstatic about. And I think his girlfriend will be, too.
Hey, that's a good way to convince him.
Yeah, no kidding.
Justin Vaughn trying for that 60. Steve Goddard, the other side of the racetrack.
Goddard, part of the WPI Pro Nitrous crew, been chasing that elusive 3-second barrier for him. That's really a top sportsman car that he's cranked up to try to come run with us pro mods. He loves running heads-up stuff, but it's really a small combo in the grand scheme of the nitrous world for pro mod. It's only 784 cubic inches with only 5 systems of nitrous on it.
And again, they only might seem comical to some, but in the world of pro modified, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Absolutely. When you're looking at almost 1,000 cubic inches in most of these nitrous motors these days, 784 is, lightweight against a heavyweight for sure. But all eyes are on Justin Bond right now to see if we can hit that 60 tonight.
TCS lane has been strong all day. Steve Goddard again purging the nitrous system before he gets brought into the beams in that GTO, which I believe is Scott Blake's former race car.
Correct. That's an old Scott Blake PDRA Top Sportsman car.
Good to see Scott back out. We'll see him in a few pairs in his 1969 Camaro as Justin Bond over there in the TCS lane, again getting 3 NHRA National Event wins so far in the 2023 season. Your current points leader, electing to keep the Pro Charge 69 Camaro, save it, and bring out the 68 Camaro with the screw supercharger on top that he ran at the World Series of Pro Mod. Got Brady in Florida. Justin Bond, oh boy, 368 new number one qualifier, and I think we got a guy getting a haircut.
I think we do too. 368 for Justin Bond. 205 goes to the top. Number one qualifier. I'm excited for two different reasons right now, and I got Justin Bond with all the supporters. I mean, in the replay that's going to be showing here real shortly, all of the supporters, the decals on Justin Bond's car, so many of them. Yeah, there's Bahrain one, got the main decal on the side, but you look at the side of Justin's car, the amount of local supporters on that car. It's so awesome to see Justin up here racing and dominating like he's been trying to do for the last couple years.
We've seen those Bahrain 1 cars kind of just dancing front tires until at least the 330-foot mark, and it's worked for both of them. They are now at the top of the qualifying ladder with Bond and Belushi, and Belushi just nipping out just in the speed department, running 205.98 as opposed to Bond's 205.20 by just the tiniest margin. And Horn giving it one of his patented burnouts all the way down, almost to the 330-foot mark in the TCS lane, and the JS Power Sports Willys, as you mentioned, and some Brad Anderson power for the JS team and the 41 Willys that Steve extensively reworked, easy for me to say, in the offseason last year, only to have that unfortunate top-end incident at the Langley Loafers old-time drags. I know the crew has been working hard to get that car turned around and back out. And Steve, a consistent 14-player last year once they finally got the tune-ups figured out, and probably looking at dipping in 3 seconds tonight if that thing gets hooked up.
Well, that car actually went 390 on its fourth pass out here at Doorwarz last year before, his unfortunate loss to Justin Bond, I believe, in the second round last year. And then just really getting a handle on it when the Loafers race happened. So we never saw that car reach its potential. They did a massive overhaul on that car. It's all really, really light carbon fiber now. The whole car's been redone the last couple of years. That's going to be a low 380 car at least.
So Steve Horn getting brought in, and a driver with a lot of tuning experience and getting a lot of seat time behind the wheel in a variety of different race cars. Courtesy of the JS Power Sports fleet. And of course, they've got a second pro mod on the property here that they have got lined up and ready to go in the qualifying line back in the staging lanes. But Horn is pre-staged and staged. Here he goes. Unfortunately, Steve's going to have to click her off just past the Christmas tree as that thing went right up into tire shake. But again, the good thing is you guys got a few hits tomorrow, this being the first hit of the Doorwarz weekend to get that thing dialed in.
That's right, 3 tomorrow. 101 60-foot, definitely a little bit lazy on the 60-foot. Couldn't quite get up on the tire there. I know Jay Severson will be on the keyboard tonight, getting that thing rocking and rolling here tomorrow for Doorwarz 11. Day number, are we on day 2 yet or 3? I don't know. I've been here for over a week, so I've lost track.
I was going to say it all kind of blends into one. I even pulled in a full day yesterday, and it still seems. I was joking with Shelby up here in the tower. The coffees keep getting bigger and bigger every time I show up here in the morning.
Are they stronger and stronger as well?
Of course, you got to amp up the caffeine.
So what you're really saying is I need to hang out in the tower more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So because in the tower you'll get more coffee.
At least at the Starbucks.
You know what? I think this morning I got a coffee and I set it down in the golf cart. I think it's still sitting there. I might have took like 3 sips out of it.
I'm sure that's probably in prime condition by now here at what?
Well, now it's iced coffee.
There we go. Here comes the next pair, and we got a pair of Mustangs. Keith Turecki over there. Keith, the big cubic inch nitrous combo for the racer out of Kelowna. 814 cubic inches of forward power underneath the hood. And Keith, a racer that you know well in the Mach 1 and the TCS side of the racetrack.
Yeah, Tom Reefmeyer out of Edmonton, or Sherwood Park, Alberta, with the HST Racing Mach 1 Mustang. Cool story about that car. Even when he sent it to Jerry Bickle, it was in Jerry Bickle's shop when Jerry Bickle had that unfortunate fire a number of years ago. It burnt down. When they had to rebuild it, the steel roof that was on that car was able to get salvaged. The steel roof on that car, that's the only thing that's steel on that car. The rest of it's carbon fiber. But the roof on that car, at least this is what I'm told, is the roof on Tom's Mach 1 from when he was a teenager.
That is a very cool story, and something that's also very cool is that thing is also Ford powered.
Yeah, the block, the Hemi block itself is based off of a Ford big block, and I'm pretty sure so is Keith Korecki's.
So side by side, Ford Pro Mods, 3 Ford powered cars in the property here. As I know, Tom, I think I read a Drag Race Canada article that said he took inspiration from Glenn May's old Cranberry Connection T-Bird and Ford Ranger when he was looking at the power plant for that machine.
Yeah, that's a story that he's never told me about, but yeah, Tom's always had a knack for the big cool stuff.
So 4:14 for Tom Riethmeyer in the 1971 Ford Mustang. Keith Korecki, unfortunately, having to click it off early just before the 330-foot mark over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. In Mission Raceway Park, it is a very tight racetrack right now, so you have to hit it just right to make sure that that thing hooks up and throw a lot of power at the tune-up.
Absolutely. Riethmeyer gets down there. 414 for Riethmeyer's car. That's a fairly respectable pull for him. He's still looking for his first 3-second pass. Now, 2 of probably the most beautiful builds on the property coming into the line right now. Ryan Griffin's Mustang, twin turbo, the only turbo car on the property running Pro Mod this weekend that I'm pretty sure. Somebody's probably going to correct me and come around the corner with something else, but I don't think it is. But that car is the coolest thing in the world, and one of the things that's the neatest thing is take a look at the exhaust. This is a turbo car with zoomies.
Not the traditional bullhorns.
No, but how does a turbo car with one outlet have 4 zoomies coming out from under the fenders?
I believe there's a little bit of custom work on that Ryan managed to get. As you mentioned, this car was, I believe Ryan had 10.5 tires in the back of it. It was the full-blown frenzy the first time he had the big tires in the back of this 67 Mustang.
And still trying to get the handle on it, and it's just going to be a wicked hot rod when they get this thing tuned up. Scott Blake, on the other hand, Canadian from Red Deer, ex-PDRA racer, coming back to Canada. And definitely not a happy 959 right now in Scott's car.
No, a little bit weird in the burnout there as they'll back him up into the water box for attempt number 2 at the burnout. And Scott, up until around 2018, I want to say, was running with the PDRA, took some time off, and had this car put back together in the last few years.
Yeah, I believe that was right. I also know that Scott had a pretty wicked incident there a number of years back, and had this car built, and they brought it out for full-blown frenzy, and it was on kill from the very beginning. And he's one of our cars in the semifinals coming up here. That'll be happening in qualifier number 3 and 4 from full-blown frenzy tomorrow.
I believe that semifinal matchup is going to have 2 nitrous 69 Camaros with Ryan Hayward the other half of that battle.
Yes, Ryan Hayward going to be coming up a little later in the program as well. But Scott Blake was definitely the class of the field when it came to the nitrous cars down at Full Blown Frenzy, and he is the only other car on the property other than Bahrain 1 cars to dip into the 70s so far.
We'll see if he can get down the TCS lane here, as we've seen all the best runs so far down the left side of the racetrack. Ryan Griffin, as Keith mentioned, trying to get that big tire tune-up dialed in, has had a few early shutoffs over the weekend, but some strong early numbers if he can get that thing to run all the way down to the finish line. So Scott Blake getting ready to bring the Camaro in up against the 67 Mustang of Ryan Griffin. You can hear him building up the boost and trying to hold that thing back as he trips on that bottom bulb. Blake left hard, thing kind of drove over to the center line, and quick pedal gives Blake a 451 with a 120 miles an hour. Griffin off it pretty much right after he passed the Christmas tree. And again, Blake also shutting it off and saving it for tomorrow's session. So again, taking a swing at it here while the conditions are still pretty cool and the sun is down in the nighttime session.
Yeah, the car definitely started driving towards the center line in the replay there, and Blake thought about pedaling it there, did get back in it for second, but more than likely just let's just save this for tomorrow, and there's lots of racing left in this Doorwarz 11 weekend, so tomorrow's another day. Keep the car shiny side up, and we'll keep racing.
Coming up next, the battle of the 1950s Chevys. 1957 Chevy for Jordan Lazick, J.R. Lazick, in the TCS side of the racetrack. The Bunker Junker for Bel Air Power, Rad Torque, and 24/7 Compression up against Tony Moretto, making his return to Pro Modified competition here at Mission Raceway Park. And Doorwarz out of Kelowna, this 55
And this is the official WPI 24/7 Compression rivalry. Dean Bettinson's car, who works with 24/7 Compression, Bel Air Power, versus Tony Moretto, who is one of the main managers over at WPI.
And also, nitrous versus blower battle as well.
Well, the 24/7 Compression Pro Boost class and the WPI Pro Nitrous class sponsors, respectively, one in each lane here. Both big supporters of the West Coast Pro Mods. And, J.R. Lazick is definitely the giant in this one. But Moretto's still got that 905 or 904, whatever it is. One of the older big nitrous motors before they went up to the 959s. Rocking that 55 Chevy over there. But keep your eye on Lazick. That car likes to carry the wheels out to 300 feet.
We saw him back when he ran this car in 2021 run a 370 a few years ago.
Yeah, but allegedly, when the 60 foot's faster than a top fuel car, I think he was dragging a diaper. I mean, come on.
So a 380 for Lazick earlier on. And again, it does always help you when you have something else dragging underneath the car, tripping the timing lights. But J.R. Lazick trying to get the Bunker Junker down the TCS lane up against Moretto in the 55 Chevy. How about that for Lazick breaking into the 370s with a 379 with a 3 at 208 miles an hour. I think that is a new West Coast Pro Modified speed record.
Not only is that the Mission Raceway 8th mile Pro Mod record, but that is an overall West Coast Pro Modified record. All he'll have to do now is just back that up tomorrow, which I'm pretty sure Lazick's going to be able to do.
Definitely showing they have that potential in their back pocket. So J.R. Lazick, strong run there into the 70s, joining the Bahrain 1 camp with that 379 with a 208 miles an hour. But Justin Bond still at the top with that 368 from earlier on. As we mentioned, Daycow Ventures and Dave Kowalski earlier, there is Dave lined up and ready to go underneath the Lordco Auto Parts Bridge in the C7 Corvette, which was actually the first C7 body built for Pro Modified competition, if I'm not mistaken, that Dave got his hands on.
It was absolutely the first one to come out of, I believe it's a Rick Jones car? Isn't it?
I believe so. I believe it's RJ
a Rick
race
Jones
cars.
car.
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure it was definitely the first C7 to come out of Rick Jones' shop. That's almost for sure. So Captain Caveman himself sitting here, ready to go down the TCS lane, and the other nitrous competitor we were talking about, who was a killer on 10.5s a few years ago in Vegas, Ryan Hayward, definitely a pretty bad hot rod with the big tire on, but still hasn't gotten a full handle on that car.
He's been making a few solid passes over the weekend. Broke into the 3-second zone out of Marysville. Kowalski lighting up the rear Goodyears.
Kowalski ran his first ever 3-second pass earlier today in testing.
He's been trying to break into that range for a very long time. I believe it was a 96.
Yeah.
Is what he ran in testing too.
and we're all giving his crew chief a hard time because he's been having motorhome troubles. He's still on his way down here. We told him that we're going to fire him when he gets here because Dave finally ran his first 3 and his crew chief wasn't even here.
Yeah, might as well turn around at this point.
Yeah, sorry, dude, you're done.
So Dave out of Fort St. John, but as mentioned, spent a lot of time down here in the southern part of BC with Daycow Ventures and Ryan Hayward. A whole lot of nitrous and a whole lot of 959 cubic inches.
Another Rick Jones car, I believe.
Again, if we're not mistaken, and the cool thing about Ryan's car is you look at that thing, it's got beautiful blue on it, but they left the stripe as carbon fiber when you get a look at it down in the pits.
Yeah, it's a really cool build. That was actually a car that was up in Alberta for a little while at Gary Weslowski's. It went back to Ricky Jones. He refurbished it, redid it, and is now back out here running West Coast Pro Mods with a big 959 in it. And looking forward to seeing what Ryan can do out here at Doorwarz.
So Ryan Hayward turning on that top bulb. Here comes Kowalski, the supercharged vet. Wheels up for both of them. Hayward goes through the traps, 383 with a 595 miles an hour. And Dave Kowalski runs his first 390, then runs his first 380, 389 with a 4 at 185 miles an hour. And safe to say, Keith, the crew chief might want to turn it around there for Dave.
I think so. You know, I've always, there's a rule in West Coast Pro Mods for the guys that haven't been able to make that 3-second hit. You know, we always run weights. We always scale cars, right? But if you're coming out and you're kind of in that 4.0 range still, then we just say, you know what? Come out and have some fun with us. We don't mind so much about your weight if you're 4.0 car. Well, Dave just went all the way to full weight with that 389. So I sure hope he's been running at full weight all this time, or he may have about 200 pounds to put in that C7 Corvette tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot heavier the next time it goes across the scales as we get ready for Jay Severson. Pause for big-time burnout over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane, and Steve Nicholson.
You know, I really don't know what it is about Jay Severson's cars. I've been around and watching Jay Severson race since the 90s, and everything that Jay Severson has ever raced has been louder than everything else. And I asked him once, I said, Jay, why is your car so much louder than everyone else? He just about knocks me over with the sound when I'm on the starting line. And he said, I just got more power than everybody else. Which, you know, doesn't really translate into the scoreboards. But, hey, man, whatever floats your boat. I mean, that's what he wants to tell me. But I don't know what it is. The way his headers are shaped, just the way the car is tuned, the way that screw blower twists. That thing is so loud. It's got a different pitch to it.
And Jay, a runner-up at the first ever Doorwarz here at Mission Raceway Park in that beautiful 57 Chevy. They did a complete motor swap in between the semifinals and the finals that year, and then they went to go turn it over in the starting line, and unfortunately it would not fire as Steve Nicholson purging the nitro system with his Chevy Corvette, the split window vet, running a 10.5 tire, but Steve has been well into the 420s and 14s and a former Streetcar Supernationals champion in the Outlaw 10.5 class as well.
Absolutely, and Steve Nicholson at SCSN weight with that car up here in the West Coast Outlaws. The car's got to be a bit heavier, and Steve says, you know what, I want to leave it at SCSN weight, so that puts me into a Pro Mod class, so he's got to come and try to run with the big dogs. Hoping to see a 390 out of Steve here tonight, but Jay Severson should be well into the 80s if that car can get, again, through that elusive shake zone. Something rolling out the front of Jay's car, and Steve all over the place.
Yeah, straight up into tire smoke pretty much as soon as he got to the 60-foot cone. And tough break for Jay there. They've been having some troubles with the car. They got it down the racetrack, ran a pretty soft 430 earlier on Thursday, and then came out and had the blower belt off of it one of the runs today. Then they tried bringing it back and wouldn't fire, and unfortunately looks like shedding some parts on the starting line as they will back the JS Power Sports 57 Chevy back through the water box and make the tow down the return road. Unfortunately, with the tow strap hooked up in the back of the tow vehicle. Well, there we go, and just like that, the first pair of West Coast Pro Modifieds fires up, and we got Keith Peterson coming up here in the tower from the West Coast Pro Modifieds. Steve Goddard over here in the tower side, getting ready to roll into the burnout box in his GTO up against Khaled Al-Balushi in the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. Last night was a late night for some. It seemed like a pretty standard night for the Bahrain 1 team. What a professional operation that is. A lot of these lower budget teams like Steve Goddard, they don't have that spare bullet sitting in the trailer. The heads were off, the pistons were out. They were still up at 2 or 3 in the morning filing piston rings on that 800 cubic inch nitrous breathing monster in that GTO of Steve Goddard. So they're a little worse for wear here this morning, but they're definitely looking to get back in the swing of things.
And as we've seen, track conditions still able to lay down a solid pass. There's a few improvements in the door slammer category, and looking for some improvements here in the ET department. I know Belushi already running that 71 last night. Goddard running a strong run for him as well, but there's going to be a few guys here coming up in the lanes looking for some big-time improvements when they come up to the water box.
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, in the heat of the day, that's going to be a pretty tough go for some of the guys. But Steve Goddard got that. It was hurt last night, so we're definitely looking for a big improvement out of Steve.
So Steve getting ready to bring that thing into the beams, just waiting. You can see the crew chiefs out in front of their respective cars getting ready to guide them into the first beam to break that and get ready for the first pair in West Coast Pro Modified qualifying. Again, Khaled Al-Balushi, the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro, currently sitting second in the qualifying order, and Steve Goddard has been trying to squeak his way into the threes. He's run a couple of 4.0s so far in test and tune here at Mission Raceway Park, and that former Top Sportsman GTO turned it on the top ball as we get ready for the first pair of West Coast Pro Modifieds. Belushi has to shut it off, and Goddard gets down the racetrack clean with a 411 with a 377 miles an hour. And Steve and the team have to be pretty happy after having to thrash on that thing and get it up and ready for Q2 here this afternoon.
Yeah, a good solid starting point for Steve Goddard. He'll be turning that thing around and coming up and definitely looking to get down, like I say, in the elusive 399 range for him. Next pair, this is his last chance to get another lick on the car before his semifinal run to finish off full-blown frenzy. Scott Blake over in the Lordco lane, going to be going up against Steve Horn in that beautiful JS Power Sports Willys.
And Steve, again, having to do some extensive work over the course of the last year or so to get that car back together. Scott Blake returning this year to Pro Modified competition for the former PDRA regular from Alberta. Horn, the supercharged Willys up against the 950 cubic inches of nitrous-assisted power underneath the hood scoop with Scott Blake's Camaro. And Keith, a good indication of the different power adders that you can run here in the Pro Modified category. And kind of the beauty of it is all these power adders can come together and create really close racing at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and the 8th mile concept that we're running tightens it up even more. Steve Horn with the Roots blower on the Willys, the big 959 for Scott Blake. There's screw blowers. We don't have any Pro Chargers here this weekend. We do have a twin turbo entry as well, so it's a well-rounded field of combinations for sure.
So Steve Horn out of Burnaby in the Willys, and attention to the pits. Top Fuel Harley, we needed lane 1, Pro Mod Bike to lane 2. Top Fuel Harley to lane 1, Pro Mod Bike to lane number 2. So Scott Blake, who's been in the 370s in test and tune action here this weekend, unfortunately had to shut it off early last night in qualifying, looking to step up big time in the qualifying ladder up against Steve Horn, who also had to shut off that Willys early. And you mentioned Scott's going to be in the semifinals for the full-blown frenzy, which unfortunately couldn't be finished at Pacific Raceways, but is now coming here to Mission Raceway Park. So the last real checkout pass that Scott gets before he has to step it up for competition coming up in round 3 of West Coast Pro Modified qualifying. Top end, how about a 379 with a 198 miles an hour, and Scott Blake, quickest nitrous car on the property right now, 395 with a 991 miles an hour. Solid run for Steve Horn as well, who does not have a whole lot of runs on that race car after they had to completely rebuild it.
Yeah, that's right. That'll be Steve. That's Steve's first pair down the racetrack since getting rebuilt. Again, 395, a good base run. They'll be back for next round, looking to dip it down in the 380s for sure. But 379, that'll make Scott Blake real happy with that. In the heat of the day, he'll have a good baseline for that semifinal round coming up next qualifier.
I believe that moves Scott up to the number 4 qualifying position, if I'm not mistaken. That'll be the 4th car up into the 370 zone. All right, next pair already fired. It is the Battle of the Blowers. Garrett Richards up against Dave Kowalski over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane.
So talking to both these teams last night, Garrett Richards, that car is definitely capable of getting into the 370s, but they've been having a lot of trouble. So Brent Yagi with that Walt Austin Racing engine combo, big block Ford deal, had to back it off so much just so they could get some confidence back in that Shelby 1000 team. So they just went down, nice, easy 395. Dave Kowalski is on cloud 9 right now. Broke into the 390s in testing and then went 389 last night. We've definitely been giving his crew chief, who had car trouble on the way down from Fort St. John. He missed all day yesterday. So we're giving him a hard time that if the car doesn't work right here, that we're going to fire him.
A lot of pressure on Dave's crew chief, as I know he was very excited, as you said, Keith, about even getting into the 390s, then jumping straight over the 90s into the 80s last night. And great conditions here, as you can hear just how loud that Ford Mustang, a Garrett Richards car, is, literally shaking the windows of the tower as it idles its way towards the starting line. As you mentioned, the Walt Austin Racing Boss Hemi with the screw supercharger up against the more conventional root-style supercharger of Dave Kowalski in the C7 Vet over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane.
And all that RCD equipment, RCD a big supporter of West Coast Pro Mods, RCD a big supporter of the Richards team as well.
So Kowalski having to shut it off early to a 444 with a 7, 404 with a 6 at 187 miles an hour. For Richards, getting another A to B pass in the books. Looks like a little bit of raw fuel coming out of the left bank for Richards as it kind of cleaned itself up as it went down. But again, talking about trying to build confidence with that team, as they did not make a clean lap in the test and tune session, but 2 back-to-back clean passes so far in qualifying.
Clean passes, you know, it almost sounded like a bit of a pedal within 60 feet for Richards. 107 on the 60-foot is definitely not where that screw-blown Mustang likes to live. 968 for Kowalski, and something not feeling right about half-track for Kowalski. Clicks it off. So we'll see what's going to be going on with Captain Caveman's car, and hopefully we'll be back trying to get deeper into the 380s for Q3.
And again, race fans, to see these teams go down the return road, make sure to give them a round of applause. Thank them for coming out here to the Doorwarz 11, courtesy of the West Coast Pro Modifies, as Dave Kowalski and Garrett Richards' crew head down the return lane to go pick up their drivers at the top end. So here we go with the next pair, and it is a pair of Outlaw 10.5 racers. Ryan Griffin used to have 10.5 tires in the back of that fairly new-built Mustang. The 1967 Mustang unfortunately had an early shutoff last night up against Steve Nicholson, another driver looking for an improvement from last night. Got about 60 feet before the thing drove straight up into tire shake.
Yeah, I'm not sure if what was going on with Nicholson. There's all kinds of power trying to get down through that 10.5 tire. That's definitely an issue. Ryan Griffin, I'm not sure that car ever even saw the track with the 10.5 tire on it. That's what he originally had planned. But saw what the West Coast Pro Mods were doing, put the big tire on it, said, I'm going turbo racing. And a turbo car went a 960-something, 60-foot last night, which is absolutely insane. NHRA Turbo Pro Mod cars are still running 101 60-foots.
And that's been their big thing, as well as always big top-end speed from the turbo cars, but it does take a second for them to get going. So Griffin, if he can get that thing to run the full 660 feet, is going to be deadly with that combo over here in the TCS side of the racetrack. Once again, Pro Mod Bike, we need you to lane 2, and No Box, you are on standby. Pro Mod Bike, we need you in lane 2. No Box, you are on standby. So Steve Nicholson with that big cubic inch. Sonny's power plant over there in the split window vet that, again, running on those tiny 10.5 tires. Steve, multi-time Streetcar Super Nationals winner in the Outlaw 10.5 division. And you heard a little bit louder engine note from a turbo car than you're used to, because Keith, that has a unique feature when it comes to the exhaust on that car for Ryan Griffin.
Right. You don't usually see the bullhorns or some form of single exit on those turbos, turbo Pro Mod entries. Griffin, with a different approach, built 3 pipes as the exhaust exit. The 4th pipe is actually the blow-off valve.
Well, there you go. That's how it's got the 4 pipes on either side. As Ryan Griffin from Olympia, Washington, the state capital, backing up in that 67 Mustang, again trying to get a representative run on the board here in round number 2 of West Coast Pro Modified qualifying, up against Steve Nicholson. Purging the nitrous system, over 900 cubic inches for Steve Nicholson. And before, we saw a lot of the nitrous cars with the scoop, but some guys electing to take that off and just let the injectors kind of sit out in the breeze.
Well, you know, and some of that is, you know, at one point they had the little 800 cubic inch motors, and then when they put the 959, the scoop just wouldn't fit. And other guys, well, you know, nitrous is so volatile that those intake blowbacks that they get quite a bit, those scoops don't take very well to that. So they just they don't even bother having it on there, because the cleanup time, clean up all that carbon fiber off the racetrack, they'll just leave those scoops off. And so if something does go wrong, well, us fans don't have to wait and for that cleanup to happen.
Well, yeah, it also gives more place for that concussion to go, as you mentioned there, Keith, is one final purge of the nitrous system from Nicholson, again trying to get down the racetrack. Same thing for Ryan Griffin as the crew members back away, and it'll be up to the drivers, in the drivers' hands, to get it down the racetrack cleanly and try and get on that qualifying sheet a little bit higher up the order. Cars side by side to the stripe. How about a 414 with an 178 miles an hour for Steve Nicholson. Ryan Griffin, a 419 with an 8 at 162 miles an hour, and that was probably one of Ryan's first full pulls in that car under full power to the finish line.
I would definitely agree with that. Even in full-blown frenzy, he was having troubles getting through that 300-foot mark and rolling the boost in. 60-foot was a little off there this morning, but I'm thinking that what they're trying to do is an A to B pass. They wanted to move up into the mid side of the ladder, somewhere around in there, and Nicholson getting that power to the ground in that 10.5 tires. So good on him.
Nicholson, again, could be a sleeper here as we get into eliminations time, as next pair lined up ready to go. Keith Korecki, the TCS lane, the 1967 Shelby out of Kelowna, the 814 cubic inches of Ford power built by KNS Machine, courtesy of Keith and J.R. Lazick.
I absolutely love watching these two race. There's so many stories that these two families can tell. They grew up as neighbors. Keith Korecki, really good friends with the second generation of Gen 3 power, Roy Lazick. And, Roy told Keith was the first guy that found out that Roy was going to have another baby. And the product of that was young Jordan Lazick. Jordan Lazick used to hang out around Keith's machine shop growing up as a kid, learned a lot about building motors, building race cars from Keith Korecki himself, and all through that. So there is so much history in these two families out of the Kelowna region. The motorsports community in Kelowna have a lot to owe to both of these families right here.
And Lazick, who's kind of made a name for himself in small tire competition, no slouch here in the West Coast Pro Modifieds as well. We have seen a slew of 200-mile-an-hour passes here this weekend, but got the first 200-mile-an-hour run at the full-blown frenzy and has a bye run into the final round for that race that will be completed here in the next few qualifying sessions with you guys.
Yeah, he may be paired up against somebody just for the qualifying purposes, but we'll consider it his bye run, and he will move on. Again, I got to say it, if that car goes, he went 208. So if he can get that back towards the 60 foot a little more power in early, and this car will be well into the low 70s, possibly into the 60s.
Lazick, currently number 3. Korecki had his shut-off last night, looking to improve. Big-time tire shake for the Mustang, and another 370 run, a 379 with a 3 for Jordan Lazick, and that is just 1/1000th of a second slower than his 379 with a 2 that he ran last night, and still some big mile an hour, 200.62 miles an hour. So that bunker junker almost looking like a bracket car so far with back-to-back 379s.
Absolutely. So, Ryan Hayward probably just back around the corner in the lanes, getting ready to come up here in his nitrous entry as well. Seen both of the entries from Full Blown Frenzy run in the 370 range. He knows he's got to step up here with that big tire on that Ricky Jones Camaro to get up with them to run their semifinal here. This is Tony Moretto coming into the water box right now. Looks like they might be running him up by himself.
So Moretto in that 55 Chevy, another racer out of Kelowna, getting ready to roll through the water box. Again, 903 cubic inches of nitrous-assisted power for Tony. Moretto taking some time off from Pro Modified Racing, kind of coming back tail end of last year. Made an appearance here at Mission Raceway Park for Smoke, Fire, and Thunder. Getting ready to back that car up. Another one of the guys that had an early shut-off last night. So trying to come back here in session number 2 and move well up the qualifying order. Ran a 560 with an 8 at an off-song 85 miles an hour for the driver that came in as the number 11 qualifier. Has since been knocked down 2 spots to the number 13 position. And Tony, another one of the big supporters of racing here with the West Coast Pro Modifieds, and I know they got the fun little thing between himself and Dean Bettinson's camp and the Bunker Junker crew that you just saw run in the 57 Chevy.
Right, the Bunker Junker having the 24/7 compression and Bel Air Power banners on their car, their compression company, based out of Red Deer, spread out all across Alberta, working in the oil patch. Tony Moretto with Waukesha Pierce Industries, another compression company, worldwide compression company, but they have a big base out at Red Deer and all across Alberta, and they have quite the rivalry going with the West Coast Pro Mod, with WPI sponsoring the Pro Nitrous class, and 24/7 sponsoring the Pro Boost class.
So Tony Moretto, who's at the first Doorwarz, hasn't been to one since then, coming back and trying to lay down a solid pass in the TCS side of the racetrack in that gorgeous red 55 Chevy. That thing right off the hit drove hard towards the center line, and Tony having to shut it off again. So continuing to work back in the pit area as they try to sort that race car out. With a 785 with an 8 at only 56 miles an hour, as Tony again coasting through to the top end to make the turn off.
A couple more drivers pulling out of the arch have been struggling here this weekend. I know Jay Severson had the blower pulley shear right off that screw blower last night on that JS combo. And Ryan Hayward just having a hard time on this side of the border, getting a handle on this racetrack here this weekend. Hopefully he can get things sorted out here and get a good baseline to be ready for his race against Scott Blake in the next round of competition.
So Hayward over here, the RJ race car is Camaro, and the TCS side of the racetrack, and Jay Severson, that 57 Chevy out of Mission, the JS Power Sports Machine. Big time burnout from Mr. Severson, carrying it past the 330 mark and letting her roll right through the traps as well. And he's going to have to back up almost 1,000 feet.
Hey, anybody ever heard of that guy named John Force? I don't think so. I think this Jay Severson guy would have a thing or two to say. Good thing we're not an 8th mile racetrack, or he'd be in the sand trap by now. Holy, Jay Severson, what a showman. We love having JS Power Sports out here. That whole crew, just a wild bunch to run with, and putting on a show for you here at Doorwarz 11, presented by Titanium Auto Group. Just loving this. Ryan Hayward rushing up the starting line, but he's got a lot of nitrous to purge out of that thing before he rolls into the beam, so he'll be a minute.
So again, Ryan Hayward, just that one last purge of the nitrous system to get that car all ready to go, as Severson finally backing up from the burnout in the 57 Chevy. Again, did not get a run in last night, as Keith mentioned, had the blower pulley shear clean off the front of that 57 Chevy as he gets ready to be brought into the beams. Hayward's crew waiting for that 57 Chevy to bump in. And Severson has been a runner-up here at Doorwarz in the past, but is looking for his first Doorwarz win for the long-time pro-modified competitor that used to run a really cool Chevy truck out here before switching to this 57 Chevy Bel Air.
And I've still seen that truck around, haven't I? Somewhere or another. I think it's still running somewhere in the Northwest. But yeah, that thing was definitely a cool deal.
Hayward having to shut it off early there in a 5:59. Not what Jay would have wanted either over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Final call for Top Fuel Harley and Pro Mod Bike. Final call for Top Fuel Harley. Top Fuel Harley, as you guys are in lane 1. Pro Modified Bike, you are in lane number 2. And Ryan Hayward going to rest on his 383 with a 5 at 195 miles an hour from last night. Currently keeps him in the number 5 position. As two more heavy hitters getting ready to roll into the water box. And the man we mentioned, Justin Bond, running that 368 last night in the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro.
Yeah, 368 in the nice cool air. Both Khalid and Justin running in the heat of the day during testing and still putting on solid numbers in the 70s. Definitely looking forward to seeing what Justin's going to do here. This will really kind of set the tone for what tomorrow is going to be like on Elimination Day for the first couple rounds.
Tom Riethmeyer over there in the other lane in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack in his 1971 Mach 1 Mustang out of Sherwood Park, Alberta. And Tom, another one of the Ford-powered Pro Mods with that Root-style supercharger setup. The block you were saying, Keith, last night actually based off of a Ford.
Yeah, that is a 4.9 bore space, big block Ford motor in that thing. It's maybe not the one out of the pickup truck that you had in your 460, but it's a 526 Hemi Ford block. Ford heads.
Here we go, getting ready for the burnouts from Riethmeyer and Bond.
And Riethmeyer still running the clutch in that Mach 1 Mustang.
A 3-pedal setup over there on the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack as Justin Bond getting ready to back up his machine. Not the car we saw here last year. That's the NHRA Fuel Tech Pro Mod with the Pro Charge combo. They're breaking out again. We mentioned the car that Justin ran at the World Series of Pro Mod down at Braden in Florida, the Outlaw setup with his 68 Camaro.
That's right. Kind of makes sense for a guy that is in the points lead in NHRA right now to maybe save that combo to continue on and maybe win an NHRA World Championship this year. That local boy, doing well down in that scene. Says, let's pull the Outlaw car out and come and kick some butt. They kind of came up here with their NHRA setups last year and ran near the top of the pack, but Dean Benson clipping Khalid in the final round. But this year they're not messing around. They've come all guns set on kill.
And they want that Doorwarz win here at Justin's home racetrack. As getting ready to go with Riethmeyer and Bond again, the two supercharged combos, the screw-blown Camaro over here in the TCS side, and the Roots supercharged Mustang in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Bond, again, the car driving towards the center line, 405 at 181 miles an hour for Riethmeyer in the Mustang, and that's going to improve on his 414 rather from last night with 170 miles an hour. So Riethmeyer is going to step over Steve Goddard's car for the 9th qualifying spot, I believe. Well, there you can hear the first Pro Modified coming to life down there. Just shy of the burnout box, getting ready to roll through the water box, and it is the 1957 Chevy of J.R. Lazick out of Kelowna. The screw-blown bunker junker, as it is known, the Bel Air Power Rad Torque 24/7 compression sponsored machine. Lazick currently sitting in the number 3 qualifying spot with a 379 with a 3. Just a few thousandths of a second ahead of Scott Blake's 379 with a 7. Big speed, though, for Lazick, 208 miles an hour, which is an unofficial West Coast Pro Modified record and a Mission Raceway Park 8th mile track record in Pro Modified competition that he set last night in qualifying. Came back, ran within 1/1000th of a second in the heat of the day in the earlier qualifying session, as J.R. Lazick, who runner-up in Doorwarz 2021 and also is in competition, Outlaw 275 competition, getting that 57 brought into the staging beams. The car owned by Dean Bettinson. Dean used to run this car in Top Sportsman, and Dean, the defending Doorwarz winner, unfortunately selling off the Pro Mod operation, but keeping this car that he has so much affection for as the bunker junker gets ready for round number 3. J.R. Lazick was carrying the front end, and he blipped the throttle to try and bring it back down. A 427 with a 2 early shutoff at 130 miles an hour. So J.R. Lazick, you'll get a look at it in the instant replay. Again, carrying the front wheels, and fortunately putting that car down as the chute comes out just as it crossed the line there in the TCS side of the racetrack. So Lazick, the first car on track for round number 3 of Pro Modified qualifying. And we'll come on up to our next pair, and it is the battle of the 1969 Camaros here in Pro Modified competition, with Scott Blake in the TCS side of the racetrack up against Ryan Hayward over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. And this is going to be the semifinal from the full-blown frenzy down at Pacific Raceways. Unfortunately, they ran up against the curfew, couldn't complete the semifinals and the finals, so this side-by-side pairing will decide who advances to the finals of that race, which will be decided in qualifying session number 4. Both of these cars want to get down the racetrack. Scott Blake, TCS side of the racetrack, former regular in PDRA competition. 950 cubic inches of nitrous-assisted power plant underneath the hood of Blake's machine, up against Ryan Hayward out of Marysville, Washington, in the Code Blue 1969 Chevy Camaro. And Hayward took out Streetcar Super Nationals last year in the Outlaw 10.5 class, has those big tires on the back of that Camaro. Comes in as your number 5 qualifier here in West Coast Pro Modified with a 383 with a 5, 195 miles an hour, as Scott Blake gets ready to bring that machine into the beams. And again, see some of these guys shutting off if it's a qualifying run, but this is an elimination run again from the shortened, full-blown frenzy race to decide who gets into the finals. So both of these guys, if there's any hint of tire shaker, they're going to be on and off the throttle, trying to pedal those their way into the final round. Final purge of the nitro system for Ryan Hayward. Again, the racer out of Marysville, Washington, coming up to Doorwarz and running in Pro Modified here for the first time up against Scott Blake, a man with plenty of Pro Modified experience, as we get ready to see who goes into the finals from the shortened race at Seattle. Side by side to the stripe, 382, and Ryan Hayward wins it on a hole shot, 12 thousandths of a second, the margin of victory at the stripe for Hayward in the Code Blue Camaro. 382 with a 197 miles an hour. Scott Blake out of Red Deer running through to a 378 with an 8, 199 miles an hour. And both of those racers going to like that with qualifying numbers, not improving in the case of Scott Blake with that 378 with an 8. Actually, it will improve and put Blake up to the number 3 position, moving J.R. Lazick back to the number 4 spot in the bunker junker.
Whole shot win on that deal as Ryan Hayward left well before Scott Blake and yet only won that one by 12 thou. Tell you what, that was a quarter mile. If that was a quarter mile race, I don't think Hayward would have won that one.
It was very close at the stripe, but the beauty of 8th Mile is that close finish is Justin Bond over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane up against Dave Kowalski. So, Kowalski in the Corvette from Fort St. John, but the racer that spends a lot of time down here in the southern part of British Columbia with his business Daycow Ventures. Going up against your current number 1 qualifier, the only man in the 360 zone. 368 with a 4, 205 miles an hour. Justin Bond had to shut that car off in qualifying round number 2. The screw-blown Camaro up against the conventional Root Supercharger. On Dave Kowalski's car, who ran a career best number on Friday night in round number 2. Went straight into the 380s with a 389 with a 4. So Kowalski currently sitting in the number 6 qualified spot. And again, Bond at the top of the heap as both crew members bringing their cars into the beams. You can see them looking over. And as soon as both drivers are ready to bring it into the beams, break that first beam and turn on that top bulb, they're going to be set. Crews walk to the back of their cars. Kowalski pre-stage. Bond turns on the top bulb, and we are ready for Justin Bond and Kowalski to see what's going to happen if they can improve. Strong run from both. How about a 371 in the heat of the day at 205 miles an hour for Justin Bond, the racer out of Mission in the JB Equipment Bahrain 1 Rad Torque S&T TD Steel Chevy Camaro. Not improving on that 368, but a solid 371 with a 6, 205 miles an hour. Dave Kowalski gets back on the right track after again having to shut off on his first run of the day. A 394 with a 185 miles an hour. It looks like Kowalski's chute maybe knocking loose one of the quarter-mile blocks down there. Sensors, so make sure that that has been retrieved off of the racetrack before we roll on in to the next pair here in qualifying for the West Coast Pro Modifieds. So again, as we mentioned, West Coast Pro Modifieds in these next 2 sessions trying to make up for the full-blown frenzy at Pacific Raceways. They tried to run the final there and unfortunately came up against the curfew after some weather delayed the racing action a little bit. And so Jordan Lazick, who's the first car up, had a solo pass into the final round, and he is going to face off against Ryan Hayward. And the 69 Camaro is Khalid Al-Balushi, who came so close to winning Doorwarz last year up against Steve Goddard out of Red Deer, Alberta in his 2008 GTO. So again, making sure that cone is firmly in place at the top end of the racetrack before we send this next pair. And Steve Goddard in the GTO. That car was formerly Scott Blake's, we saw earlier in that red nitrous-assisted Camaro. And Steve Goddard taken over in that machine and has been trying to turn what is essentially a top sportsman car into a pro modified. And they have been trying to get that machine into the 3-second zone and into the 4.0s so far. And that machine is Steve Goddard, currently coming in at the number 10 qualifying spot at a 4.11 with a 177 miles an hour, while Belushi sits second in the qualifying order with a 371 with an 8 at 205 miles an hour.
You know, these cars might look very sleek, Cole, but it cannot be understated, the aerodynamic power that is behind these machines. And I think that incident with that quarter-mile block demonstrates that perfectly. It wasn't even a hit with the chute. It was just the wake of Kowalski passing so close that blew the quarter-mile block out of position. It's enough to knock you off your feet if you're standing close enough.
Well, those cars are, again, going over 200 miles an hour in some cases at the top end with both chutes out, so obviously a big draft that comes by and kind of knocked that cone off, but looks like it is back in place as the crew's starting to head back to the starting line, so we should be getting ready to light off this next pair in just a few moments. Khaled Belushi for Bahrain 1 Racing, again breaking out what is essentially the backup car for the NHRA side of things in that Camaro, and ran that car at the World Series of Pro Mod event down at Bradenton, Florida. It was a 32-car field. It was pretty much all in the 360-second bracket in the 8th mile at over 200 miles an hour, trying to fight for 100 grand down there. And Khaled and Justin were in competition. Another Canadian racer came in and took the top prize from Ontario. Steve Goddard, again, one of the smaller teams, West Coast Pro Modified, trying to come up and be the giant killer this weekend here at Doorwarz. When we talk about Khaled Al-Belushi as well, he is also a former NHRA top fuel driver for All Inabi Racing, and Alan Johnson, 4 NHRA national event wins in top fuel competition. And Belushi, a very accomplished Pro Modified racer over in the United Arab Emirates and multi-time Bahrain champion. The racetrack that they actually have at the Bahrain F1 track that runs along the back straight at that facility, that is the drag strip in Bahrain. So both cars fired, getting ready to roll into the water box. Steve Goddard getting ready to light up those big rear Hoosiers, and Khaled Belushi in the TCS side of the racetrack. Belushi, big burnout, almost out to the 330-foot mark as he gets ready to back that machine up. We've pointed it out over the course of the weekend, but Belushi coming up 1/1000th of a second short last year, with him and Dean Bettinson running side-by-side 375s at over 200 miles an hour at the finish line stripe. Again, they were separated by 1/1000th of a second. The difference being Dean Bettinson had a 2/1000ths of a second advantage when he left the starting line. So here we go with Khaled Belushi, the screw-blown Camaro, up against Steve Goddard. And when we say a screw supercharger versus the root supercharger, that's the actual shape of the blades inside of the supercharger itself that is the difference in that. As Steve Goddard has already lit the pre-stage bulb, waiting on Belushi. The final adjustments back with that wheelie bar height that has become oh so important in the tune-up. here in Pro Modified competition. As Goddard still waits, now bringing in Belushi. Crew member will walk to the back of the car, and we will get ready for the next pair. Belushi trying to move up to the number 1 spot. Currently sits second with a 3:71. Belushi runs it out 3:77 with a 205 miles an hour for Khaled Belushi, and a 4:10 with an 8, 177 miles an hour for Steve Goddard out of Red Deer, and that's going to be a slight improvement in the ET department for Goddard, but it's not going to move him up in qualifying order. Is still 10th with a 4:10.
It wasn't like that at the start of the day.
Just attention to everybody kind of watching where all the golf carts are, to just take a quick step back from the railing if they are in fact watching, just for safety reasons. Do not lean over the railing at any time down there at the front as we get ready to fire up the next pair in Pro Modified qualifying. Chrissy, just got a lane announcement coming up.
Attention to the pits, attention to the pits. No box. You are on standby, please. No box. You're on standby.
So here we go with the next pair. Tom Reithmeyer out of Sherwood Park, Alberta, the Ford-powered Ford Mustang. Heading into the burnout box up against another Ford-powered Ford Mustang, Keith Korecki out of Kelowna. Tom Reithmeyer not having a little bit of a weird burnout there, but we saw him do that in the test and tune on Thursday, and he still managed to run a run that was well into the 14s for the experienced racer and dedicated Ford guy. It's had a Mach 1 Mustang well, not exactly like this, but Mach 1 Mustang since high school. Actually incorporated the roof of that car into this Pro Modified, so a steel roof on the 71 Mach 1. Up against Keith Korecki, the 1967 Shelby, with 814 cubic inches of Ford assistance, and Keith Korecki with his K&S machine actually builds most of his own motors, does most of his tuning on this race car, and Keith has been running in Pro Modified since the 1990s, almost since the inception of this class on the West Coast. And we've seen a few Shelby-bodied quick door slammer cars in the Canada West Door Slammers and in Pro Modified. And Keith Korecki, kind of the man to thank for that, developed one of the first Shelby Pro Modified molds back in the 1990s when he first started racing. So Reithmeyer coming into this session with a 4:05 with a 9, 181 miles an hour. Korecki at the bottom of the qualifying list, looking to move up after not getting a clean run on both of his passes so far. Whoa, Reithmeyer getting across the center line. Korecki pedaling his way to a 4:20 with a 4 at 172 miles an hour. Korecki, you can see the tire tracks. That thing drove right over to the edge of the groove, and Korecki having to get off of it and make sure the thing was pointed back towards the center of the groove, where he got back on it to try and move up the qualifying list with that 4:20. And Korecki will go from the number 15 spot to the number 13 spot, so a 2-position improvement for the Shelby Mustang out of Kelowna. And Tom Reithmeyer getting close to the center line there in the 71 Ford Mach 1 Mustang. Managed to get it back over without clipping a cone or doing anything serious to that Mustang. So they'll get that thing buttoned back up and try it again in their session coming up tonight, Q4, later this evening. So the next pair firing up, we got Steve Nicholson running on a 10.5 tire. And Steve always likes to point out this is not a Pro Mod, it's an Outlaw 10.5 car, and he runs it with the West Coast Pro Modifieds, pretty much each and every Doorwarz, as over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane, Ryan Griffin, the turbocharged 67 Mustang out of Olympia, Washington. Griffin making his first Doorwarz start in that 67 Mustang, the twin turbocharged machine. It's the only turbocharged car on the property. Keith Peterson with the West Coast Pro Modifieds were talking, and strong 60-foot numbers from this turbo car. Sub 1 second 60-foot, which is almost unheard of with turbocharged cars that tend to have their power come in closer to the finish and have big time mile an hour, as Steve Nicholson in that split window Corvette getting backed up from the burnout, over 900 cubic inches of Sonny's racing engines for Steve Nicholson. As you got to look at the back of Ryan Griffin's Mustang, shoots out the back, the wheelie bars. Again, the wheelie bar height is so critical to the tune-up of these race cars. So the final few checks at the back of the car is Steve Nicholson will purge the nitrous system. The guy who came as a runner-up when we had the Outlaw 10.5 division as their own class here at Doorwarz, and Ryan Griffin, who originally built this car to run in Outlaw 10.5 before slapping the big tires in the back of it. And Ryan actually making really his first representative run with that car, first full pull with a 419 with an 8 at 162 miles an hour earlier, currently putting him at the 12th spot. Nicholson just ahead of him in the number 11 position at a 414 with a 0, 178 miles an hour. Nicholson pre-stage, waiting on Griffin to bump in, and then you'll hear him build up the boost in the Mustang. Griffin looks like he had to drive through some tire shake, and improvement on Steve Nicholson at 409, improves from his 414, and that's going to put him one spot up on the qualifying order to the number 10 spot, knocking Steve Goddard with that 411 back down to the number 11 position. So Ryan Griffin still running 427 at 159 miles an hour, but having to drive his way through some serious tire shake. As up next, a pair of screw-blown cars, and it is going to be Jay Severson Tower side. TCS lane out of Mission is 57 Bel Air, known as Black Betty, and up against Garrett Richards, the Ford Boss Hemi-powered 2012 Shelby, a two-time Doorwarz winner, getting ready to light it up and get ready for some burnouts.
Attention in the pits, attention in the pits. Non-electronics, no box to lane 2 and 3. No box to lane 2 and 3, please.
So here we go with Severston, who is stuck in 14th in the qualifying order, up against Garrett Richards in the 8th spot. Richards in that Shelby. It is a Walt Austin built machine, the engine department for that 2012 Shelby. And of course, you might have remembered Garrett from Pro Street Competition back in the day, having a series of wicked quick Chevy pickups. We're switching over to this very swoopy Shelby Mustang. Two-time Western Drag League racing champion and a two-time Doorwarz winner. Getting backed up from the burnout. And again, Walt Austin Racing developing this engine for Top Alcohol Funny Car competition for his son Pat Austin. And unfortunately, the NHRA kind of writing it out of the rules department. The motor was sitting around, and Garrett sticking it in the Outlaw Pro Modified, and it is over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane up against Jay Severson, who runnered up at the first Doorwarz, and again had the pulley shear clean off the front of the supercharger on his second qualifying hit, and kind of idled down the racetrack to a 550 pass in round number 2 of qualifying. So here we go, Severson trying to move way up the ladder, and Garrett Richards solidly in the show, the number 8 spot with 397. 190, big speed 199.29 miles an hour for Garrett Richards out of Tacoma. And Richards improving in the laps time department with that 390 and moves up one spot, knocking Steve Horn back to the 8th position. Richards now up into the number 7 qualifying spot.
Attention in the pits, attention in the pits. Can we get non-electronics 2 lanes 2 and 3? Non-electronics 2 lanes 2 and 3. Stock, super stock, and box, you are on standby.
So another tough break for Jay Severson as they will have to push that 57 Chevy back once again. And not what he wanted to see is they've continued to fight that car with a few different problems over the course of the weekend presenting itself. One point it sheared the blower bell off right in the hit. So Severson will get towed back to the pits. We will get ready for what looks to be the final pair in West Coast Pro Modified before we get into Top Fuel Harley action. So it is going to be Tony Moretto over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Tony, that beautifully prepared 55 Chevy. The second half of the JS Power Sports team, Steve Horn, the 41 Willys, that was rebuilt after a little bit of a top-end incident at the Langley Old Time Drags, Langley Loafers Old Time Drags. Steve coming back, and really his first full run with the car back, ran a 395 with the 9, having to shut off in the first qualifying session, but coming back in qualifying round number 2. So Jay's going to get out of the Chevy and get ready to help start up Steve's machine down there on the starting line. And Tony Moretto, who's at the first Doorwarz and then had some time off from racing, came back recently, made his first trip back to Mission Raceway Park last year, and now his first Doorwarz appearance since, well, the first Doorwarz. So, one more time, again, non-electronics, lanes 2 and 3, and stock, super stock, you guys are on standby, and also box, you are on standby. So you can see the crew coming back right now. So a very full pit area here. Just getting a report that we had 231 tech cards turned in across all the classes here at Mission Raceway Park. So great turnout here for Doorwarz. And again, we mentioned the record numbers in the Canada West Door Slammers as well, and great field of West Coast Pro Modifieds. Unfortunately, Chris Murphy having some motor problems with his 55 Chevy that we have not seen out. Chris, fortunately, crossing the center line as well during his only qualifying pass. And John DeYoung, who is supposed to be out here in his 67 Chevy Camaro, having a engine explosion in test and tune. So 2 cars unfortunately down, but still strong rest of the field getting ready for that final session coming up tonight at qualifying, as Steve Horn fired up and ready to go on that 41 Willys. Big smoky burnout from Steve Horn. Again, the S in the J&S Power Sports is Tony Moretto. 903 cubic inches of nitrous-assisted power for the 55 Chevy Bel Air. A Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack.
Attention in the pits, attention in the pits. This is the final call for Pro Mod Bikes. Final call for you, Pro Mod Bikes.
So Moretto done purging the nitrous system as both crew members signal to their drivers to bring it on up to the staging beams. Get ready to break that first beam and trip on that top bulb. So we'll see what Steve Horn out of Burnaby can do up against Kelowna's Tony Moretto. Both cars getting down the racetrack, 391 with a 2, 191 miles an hour for Steve Horn, 404 with a 9, 168 miles an hour. Tony Moretto's best run of the weekend. That's going to put him all the way up to the number 10 position for the 55 Chevy. Horn's going to stay where he is in the number 8 spot, but improves on the ET department. As the West Coast Pro Modifieds in the staging lanes, we got the first car lined up and ready to go over here in the TCS side of the racetrack, and the other half of the pairing encased in darkness right now. Here it comes underneath of the bridge with the golf cart pushing it up. And this pairing will be the final round from the full-blown frenzy at Pacific Raceways. Of course, that was run the end of May. Unfortunately, having some weather there in Seattle that pushed the eliminations up against the track's 5 o'clock curfew. So this will be the final round. We saw Ryan Hayward take out Scott Blake in the last round of qualifying, and what was the semifinal, and J.R. Lazick in the 57 Chevy, the bunker junker, over there in the TCS side of the racetrack, had a bye into the final round. So these rounds will also count for their qualifying, just like what we had in round number 3 of West Coast Pro Modified qualifying. Their final session, Justin Bond, still quickest in West Coast Pro Modified qualifying with that 368 from Friday night. And Bond electing to sit out the final session in his 1968 Camaro. So the rest of the field having to try and take that number 1 spot away from JB. Justin Bond still leading the way. Ryan Hayward up against J.R. Lazick. Lazick, the screw supercharged 57 Chevy owned by Dean Bettinson, the 24/7 compression rat torque systems, Bel Air powered. As he'll back it up from the burnout, and Ryan Hayward making the switch to running the big tires on the back of that Chevy Camaro over there on the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. 959 cubic inches of nitrous-assisted horsepower, courtesy of the folks at Rare and Morrison over there for Ryan Hayward out of Marysville, Washington. Again, the former Outlaw 10.5 competitor putting the big tires on the back and going to the final round with J.R. Lazick here for the full-blown frenzy. Again, deciding that race from Seattle is Lazick. Get ready to bring the bunker junker into the beams. Got that classic patinaed wrap on the 57 Chevy for Lazick that was formerly a top sportsman car that Dean Bettinson piloted, that they converted to Pro Mod competition with this Outlaw setup. Been running with the West Coast Pro Modifieds. Lazick, no slouch with big tire competition as well. Won big tire no time at the Streetcar Super Nationals last year in Las Vegas. As he gets brought into the staging beams, one final purge of the nitrous system, and it's Canada versus the US of A on Canada Day to decide the full-blown frenzy here in the 4th and final round of West Coast Pro Modified qualifying. Hayward gets sideways, shuts it off, and J.R. Lazick getting the job done with a 378.5, 206 miles an hour. And Lazick, his best run of the weekend, saves it for the final round of qualifying and the final round of the full-blown frenzy. So J.R. Lazick gets the trophy from Seattle. And man, Ryan Hayward on a pass as well at a great 60-foot, 950 60-foot in comparison to Lazick's 970, and then had to lift off of it just past the 330-foot mark as he carried the front end and had that car going out of the groove and towards the wall, and Ryan still coasting to a 414 with an 851 miles an hour as he gave it a quick pedal to try and keep up with the bunker junker, but could not get the job done. Here we go with the next pair in Pro Modified qualifying. Khaled Belushi, currently in the number 2 spot with 371. Getting ready to complete the burnout in that Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro. Again, Belushi on a single here in qualifying. Is if you're missing the keys to your Dodge Ram, you got a Kansas City Chiefs lanyard. They were left on the door of the concession stand. They have been turned in up here in the timing tower. Again, if you're looking for the keys of a Dodge Ram with the Kansas City Chiefs lanyard, they are now up on the 2nd floor of the timing tower. So Khaled Belushi, again, in that 2nd qualifying spot. Justin Bond electing to sit out the final session. And his 1968 Bahrain 1 Camaro, the modern version of the Camaro for Khaled Belushi, that swoopy design. For the regular and NHRA Fuel Tech Pro Mod competition, and once again, the NHRA allowing the screw supercharged combination into their quarter-mile competition this year. So Khaled switching over to that. It's Justin Bond, the NHRA side of things at least, sticking with the tried and true Pro Charged Camaro, and Khaled basically just hopping up the NHRA setup, a little bit different blower drive and a little bit different gearing in that Camaro as he'll get ready to pull her into the beams, waiting on the signal from the crew chief and just making sure that it is prime and just gonna tickle that bottom bulb on. Again, not wanting a deep stage in qualifying to try and rob ET as Khaled Belushi gets ready for his final qualifying pass. And a lot of bite. That thing did not set the front end down until Khaled got out of it. 456 with a 9, 109 miles an hour, and carrying the front end all the way through. Great shot of that on the replay, and you could see Khaled was heading towards the wall with the front wheels off of the ground, selecting to get off of it and car for another day for eliminations coming up. So Khaled Belushi residing on that 371 from earlier on in the weekend, staying number 2 for the moment. So attention to the pits, Outlaw 275, Limited Street, and Outlaw Street. You guys are on standby. Again, Outlaw 275, Limited Street, and Outlaw Street. You guys are on standby to head to the lanes. So here we go with our next pairing, and it's Steve Nicholson. And just completing his burnout in TCS side of the racetrack, that is Keith Korecki. Korecki out of Kelowna. Finally getting an A to B pass down in the 3rd session of Pro Modified qualifying. And that red Shelby Mustang, again, 814 cubic inches of forward power. It was put together by K&S Machine that Keith had his hand in building. And, of course, that is his day job for the racer out of Kelowna. It's Steve Nicholson getting backed up from the burnout as well, as you get a look at that beautiful Shelby Mustang down there in the Lucas Oil, and rather the Lordco Auto Parts live stream in the big screen here at Mission Raceway Park. As they'll reach in and get ready to purge the system. There is the purge of the nitrous, and big cubic inch nitrous combos in both lanes. Just mentioned 814 cubic inches of forward power for Korecki, over 900 cubic inches of Sonny's Race Engines power for Steve Nicholson as he does the final purge of the system. Only difference really is that Nicholson is an Outlaw 10.5 car, so that car has those little or smaller in scale Outlaw 10.5 tires, and Mickey Thompson's on the back of that split window Corvette for Nicholson, who's been running that car, hard to believe now, for approaching past 10 years. Just have a Nova that also ran with a little bit of nitrous assistance back in the day. And there is that final purge of the nitrous, where they get ready to bring both Korecki and Nicholson in for their final qualifying runs. So here we go, Steve Nicholson running a 4.0 on his last pass, trying to maybe dip into the threes. Korecki also trying to step up the game plan in the Shelby. .401, best run of the weekend for Steve Nicholson. 401 with an 8 at 184 miles an hour. Quick pedal for Korecki leads to a 419 with a 5. And how cool are the nitrous flames coming out of the header pipes as they make their way down the Lordco Auto Parts and TCS lanes. So Korecki, his best run so far of the weekend over there for the racer out of Kelowna, and Steve Nicholson with that 401, dipping into the 4.0s, both cars carrying the front end. So the Battle of the Mustangs coming up next, and two different power adders, the different choices for the preferred teams. Twin turbocharged combo for Ryan Griffin, finally making some A to B passes for that car that is very new in the grand schemes of a race car. And there's Tom Riethmeyer. So the twin turbocharged Mustang that we talked with Keith Peterson, were saying that that thing's got the zoomy headers, with 3 of them actually acting as the exhaust and one of them acting as the turbo outlet. This is how they got the zoomies for Ryan Griffin's machine that are completely custom built and unique to that Mustang, usually with the bullhorn exhaust for the turbocharged combos. And Griffin, the only turbocharged car on the property for the racer out of Olympia, Washington. And Tom Riethmeyer out of Sherwood Park, Alberta, is 1971 Ford Mustang, the Mach 1, as you got to look at the show quality machine of Ryan Griffin on the live stream for West Coast Pro Modified action. So Ryan Griffin, again, originally ordering this car for Outlaw 10.5 combination and competition, rather, and putting the big tires on the back as Tom Riethmeyer waiting. You can hear him cleaning out the motor with a couple of whacks on the throttle as final adjustments made for Griffin as he will bring that car into the beams. Riethmeyer with a Ford-powered combination, kind of unique in pro-modified racing. We have 3 Ford-powered Pro Mods on the property. Riethmeyer, 526 cubic inches of Ford base power with the the Roots supercharger on top of the Mach 1 Mustang. So we'll get ready to see if Riethmeyer can beat his 4.0 and if Griffin can get in the 4-teens. Both cars straight up into tire shake, and both drivers electing to click it off. So Ryan Griffin goes through to a 7:23 with the 2. Riethmeyer, as we get a look at the replay here up on the big screen, getting ready to roll, you can see Riethmeyer's car straight up into tire shake, and Griffin's car doesn't get much further, or just past the 60-foot timer, and got a little bit sideways. Griffin clicking it off as a lot of these teams trying to see what they can get out of qualifying, and these cool conditions here as the sun is completely set, pushing past 10 o'clock here at Mission Raceway Park, and track conditions in that thing where you got to throw a lot of power at the racetrack. Very tight racetrack here at Mission Raceway Park. Saw a lot of wheel stands. It is a very grippy surface at the moment. 2 supercharged cars lined up underneath the bridge right now. So it is Garrett Richards in the TCS side of the racetrack. Racer out of Tacoma up against Steve Horn. So here we go. Both cars fired and ready to go. And attention in the pits, Outlaw 275, Limited Street, Outlaw Street, and Pro Street. We need you guys to the lanes. So Steve Horn, the Roots Blown Willys that still only has a handful of passes on it since being rebuilt. And Garrett Richards in the ground-shaking Shelby Mustang, a two-time Doorwarz winner. Richards with the Walt Austin Racing Boss Hemi. The Ford Hemi developed by Walt Austin for top alcohol funny car competition in the late 1990s, and unfortunately again got kind of written out of the rule book by the folks at the NHRA, so the motor sat, and Garrett Richards putting it in the Pro Mod a few years ago. And the beautifully turned out Shelby with Brent Yagi helping with the tune-up on that machine is been a two-time winner of Doorwarz and actually took out Shane Molinari in the last pre-COVID Doorwarz here at Mission Raceway Park in the last quarter-mile pro-modified race for Doorwarz is Richards. Soon as that car comes up, everything up here in the timing tower starts to shake. That thing has got a wicked engine note, and Steve Horn in that 41 Willys over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane started out life, I believe, as a former Kurt Coons car and has been extensively reworked in the last few years by the folks at JS Power Sports as a racer out of Burnaby. Getting ready to try and maybe dip into the threes. Richard is already there. His best run is a 390 from the last session in the Mustang. Richards 395, 195.48 miles an hour for the racer out of Tacoma. Steve Horn having to shut it off early with 535 with 393 miles an hour. See Richards almost leaving before the tree was activated with a big-time red light. Getting to the stripe, though, with no problem. Steve Horn coasts through. So again, Richards getting that time in at 395, and he'll fall back on his 390 from earlier on today is his qualifying number. Heading into eliminations, Steve Horn from earlier on as well, running his quickest lap time in session number 3. Steve Goddard fires up the Pontiac GTO and gets ready to roll it into the water box, and see Dave Kowalski's car taking a second to come to life, but you can hear the whop of the C7 Corvette, the Daycal Ventures Vet, getting ready to roll through the water box and commence the burnout procedure. Once again, attention to the pits, Outlaw 275, Limited Street, Outlaw Street, and Pro Street. We need you to the lanes. Outlaw 275, Limited Street, Outlaw Street, and Pro Street. We need you guys to the staging lanes. So Goddard with the nitrous-assisted GTO out of Red Deer, and Dave Kowalski from Fort St. John, the supercharged Hemi for the C7 Vet. Is Goddard purging the nitrous system again, trying to coax everything he can out of the former Top Sportsman GTO that was formerly raced by Scott Blake, IHRA Top Sportsman competition. Goddard out of Red Deer, Alberta, and Dave Kowalski from Fort St. John ran his career best numbers. Came in here not having run a 3-second run. He's got 3 of them under his belt already this weekend as he gets guided into the beams. So Goddard turning on that top light, the TCS lane. We'll see what Dave Kowalski can do in the Corvette on their final qualifying passes. Steve Goddard, 4096, 176 miles an hour, and Kowalski trying to rotate the earth over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane and rips the rear tires off of it. as Kowalski shuts off in the vet after driving right up into tire shake and again having to click it off. And Steve Goddard, another strong run of 409 with a 6 at 176 miles an hour for the GTO in the TCS lane. So a pair of nitrous cars getting ready to come out on track next. That is Tony Moretto and the TCS side of the racetrack, his 55 Chevy Bel Air up against Scott Blake and the 1969 Chevy Camaro. Moretto out of Kelowna, kind of one of the older generation nitrous motors, 903 cubic inches for Tony Moretto. The Jerry Bickle Race Cars 55 Chevy. And Scott Blake, that 1969 Chevy Camaro. He was a regular for a while there with PDRA competition. Unfortunately, having a pretty big wreck at the US 131 Motorsports Park in Martin, Michigan. Took a few seasons off to rebound from that, rebuild, get actually a new race car. This is the end result. First real full season back here in pro modified competition for Scott Blake, already purchasing the nitrous system on his way back from the burnout. Again, Tony Moretto in that Jerry Bickle Race Cars 55 Chevy Bel Air finally got a decent run on the board in the last session, as they have been fighting with that race car, trying to get it to get down track. Now finally having an A to B pass under their belts. So Tony Moretto and Scott Blake. Moretto pre-stage. Here comes Blake getting ready to bring that gorgeous Camaro into the beams, and Scott Blake currently, he's still your number 3 qualifier. And both of them clicking it off, really. You can see both of them driving towards the respective walls in either of their lanes. A 624 with a 6 for Scott Blake out of Red Deer, and again, Tony Moretto clicking it off early to his 662 with a 1 is almost simultaneously, both cars getting out of it. You can see coasting through the finish line with fire out in the pipes, and we'll get ready to bring up Jay Severston in that 57 Chevy for JS Power Sports. Jay from right here in Mission, the Black Betty 57 Chevy. They have not had the weekend that they have wanted, had to abort their last run, and have really only made it down the racetrack once, and that was even coasting. Tension in the pits, Outlaw Street and Real Street. We need you guys to the lanes, Outlaw Street and Real Street. We need you guys to the staging lanes. So here we go with Jay Severston in a car that's capable of 4-second runs. Lighten up those rear Hoosiers and getting ready to engage reverse. And again, he pitched the belt in one test and tune session, had the pulley come off, one of his qualifying hits, and unfortunately then they went to go turn the thing over and actually leave the starting line after a massive burnout, and unfortunately, car wouldn't move and had to take it back to the pits with not having a run in. So Severson at the tail end of the qualifying order at the moment. Again, in the Black Betty 57 Bel Air. Has been a runner-up at Doorwarz and one of the louder cars on the property. As you hear him giving a whack of the throttle and a great look At half of the side, Severson's car is crew member coming in to bring it into the beams, and we'll see if Jay can crack that 4-second barrier and get up the qualifying order. Quick pedal, how about a 4:09? That's more like it from the JS Power Sports team. A 188.44 mile an hour charge, and hey, 4.0 after pedaling it. Not too shabby for Jay Severson, who drove through some tire shake there. You can see got in and out of the throttle, rather, TCS side of the racetrack with that 4:09, 188 miles an hour, moving up a few spots in the qualifying order. Well, here we go for round number 1 of West Coast Pro Modified as the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro. Justin Bond rolls through the water box. Bond a 3:68 in qualifying. And the first run of the weekend going to the top of the order, and with 15 cars on the property. Justin Bond getting the bye run into round number 2 of competition. So I'll use this as, again, a little bit of a test hit to see what the track will hold here as the sun is out. We had great conditions throughout the weekend for these West Coast Pro Modifieds, and Justin electing to save the car last night in the final qualifying session and sat out the session, still remained as the number 1 qualifier, as he will face the winner of Steve Horn and Steve Nicholson, as getting ready to roll it in. 3 NHRA national event wins so far in the NHRA Fuel Tech Pro Modified Series and quarter mile competition this year for Justin Bond, the current points leader in that division, and coming back, running 8th mile here for the second year at Doorwarz 11. Made it to the semifinals last year for the racer from right here in Mission. The owner of JBS Equipment turning on that top bulb as we get ready for round 1 of Pro Modified. Justin Bond drives it on through to a 3:73 with a 7, 203.71 miles an hour. Solid run there to kick things off in the low 70s second range for Justin Bond with that 3:73 with a 7, 203. And we've seen those Bahrain 1 cars solidly in the 370 zone. Pretty much every single pass that they've been able to get all the way down the racetrack this weekend. So Bond moving on into round number 2 of competition with that bye run, but not taking things easy, trying to get lane choice going into that second round of eliminations. So here we go with the next pair, getting ready to fire underneath the Lordco Auto Parts Bridge. J.R. Lazick on the TCS side of the racetrack, the 1957 Chevy. For the folks at Bel Air Power, rad torque, and 24/7 compression up against the nitrous-assisted entry of Keith Korecki out of Kelowna. Both racers from Kelowna. So Keith Korecki, the K&S Machine, 1967 Shelby with 814 cubic inches of nitrous power for Korecki as he gets backed up from the burnout, as J.R. Lazick, the 57 Chevy that got the win, the first West Coast Pro Modified win of the season just last night, carrying over the finals from the full-blown frenzy at Pacific Raceways, and J.R. getting the job done against Ryan Hayward. It's already 1 win under his belt this weekend up against Keith Korecki as the 2 racers from Kelowna lined up side by side. And JR's dad, Roy, and Keith Korecki, pretty good friends, and JR spending a lot of time around the K&S Machine shop over there in Kelowna, learning a lot about race cars and putting that to good use with his own business, Gen 3 Speed, tuning these race cars. And JR also made it to the semifinals last night, Outlaw 275 competition, rather the second round of Outlaw 275 competition, but focused on the Pro Modified for Sunday here at Doorwarz. A screw-blown combo that is owned by Dean Bettinson, with Bettinson helping out in the tuning department as well, as we get ready to go for the first pair here in round number 1 of Pro Modified. Winner moving on to round number 2. Well, Korecki had Lazic on the tree, but Lazic able to drive around him with another 370 second run, a 379 with a 7, 200.89 miles an hour, a 490 with a 0 at 119 miles an hour. Early shut off there for Keith Korecki in the Mustang, but Lazic, who's had a high 370 bracket car essentially all weekend with a slew of 378s and 379s, keeps it up with that 379 with a 7 at 200.89 miles an hour, as we'll make the call for non-electronic. You guys are now on standby. Non-electronic, you are on standby for your next round of eliminations. Comes the next pair. We got Scott Blake and the TCS side of the racetrack, the higher qualified car coming in against Jay Severston over there in the Lord Coato Parts lane, the 57 Bel Air. So Blake coming in as your number 4 qualifier up against the number 13 qualifier, and Jay Severston, who got down the racetrack with a 411 in the 57 Chevy up against Scott Blake, who was deep into the 372nd range in qualifying in that big cubic inch nitrous combo, 950 cubic inches of nitrous assisted power for Scott Blake as he purges the system on his way back from the burnout. And Scott, former regular with the PDRA, taking a few years off from racing and then putting together this beautiful Chevy Camaro that he's been campaigning here. Let's kick things off in 2023, really his first year back from racing, as Jay Severston. They've been struggling with that 57 Chevy that is capable of running in the 3-second zone, and Jay having to pedal it to a 411 last night, saving his best run for last in qualifying in the JS Power Sports Black Betty 57 Bel Air. Severson, the screw-blown combo, has gone rounds before at Doorwarz and is the runner-up at the first ever Doorwarz event to John Shalpy in the battle of the 57 Chevys. As we get ready to go to see who moves on into round number 2. Again, Blake, the lower qualified car, getting to pick his lane as Severston double bulbing the Camaro of Blake. Blake up in a tire shake, and how about that? Jay Severston moving on into round number 2. So your number 13 qualifier, and Severston runs through to a 404 with an 190 miles an hour, his best run of the weekend to take out Scott Blake's early shutoff, 489 with a 1. You can see that thing chatter the tires just before the 330-foot mark for the racer out of Red Deer, Alberta. So Blake out in round number 1, and Jay Severston moves on into round number 2. So your number 13 qualifier, again, taking out your number 4 qualifier, and Scott Blake. And we'll make the call now for non-electronics. Non-electronics for National Tire. Start making your way up to the staging lanes for your next round of eliminations. Non-electronics to the lanes. So quick check over the starting line as we get ready for a pair of nitrous cars coming up next. Steve Goddard over in the TCS side of the racetrack up against Ryan Hayward out of Marysville, Washington, over in the Lord Coato Parts lane. Also, attention the pits, electronics on standby. Electronics, you guys are on standby for Rad Torque Systems. As here we go, Steve Goddard, the GTO from Red Deer, up against Ryan Hayward out of Marysville, Washington, that is. Hayward, the runner-up in the full-blown frenzy final last night, had that car on a serious pass before he had to click it off early. The same lane that he is running in round number 1 of eliminations. Winner of this one going to move on to take on Jay Severson in round number 2, Steve Goddard. And what Keith Peterson was saying is essentially a top sportsman car that's been really cranked up to try and run with the Pro Modifieds, and that is Scott Blake's former race car, the red Camaro that just went down the TCS side of the racetrack. Steve and Scott pitted next to each other and sharing some data between the two cars is over there on the far side of the racetrack, Ryan Hayward with 959 cubic inches of rare Morrison power and a whole lot of nitrous over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Still purging the system as Goddard's crew starts to bring him into the beams. And Hayward, who is a force to be reckoned with in Outlaw 10.5 competition here on the West Coast, putting on the big tires over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane, getting ready to try and take out Steve Goddard. Goddard, your number 12 qualifier against number 5 qualifier in Hayward. Goddard getting a little sideways, and how about Ryan Hayward? 385 with a 195 miles an hour, and that Camaro is going to move on in to round number 2 of eliminations to face up with Jay Severson. So Hayward moving on there as, again, the next pair rolls up. And it will be Ryan Griffin in that twin-turbocharged 1967 Ford Mustang, the only turbo car on the property in Pro Modified competition. TCS side of the racetrack up against Khalid Al-Balushi in the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro. Electing to take the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack as the brooms are out on the starting line. Just a quick sweep of things before we move on with this next pair. So Ryan Griffin, again, the only turbocharged car on the property, and originally had that car as an Outlaw 10.5 setup. Then really before he could even run it as an Outlaw 10.5 car, changed over to the big slicks on the back and has made his first few full pulls here this weekend at Doorwarz up against Belushi, your number 2 qualifier over there on the far side of the racetrack. Griffin coming in as your number 15 qualifier, trying to take out the 3-time Arabian Drag Racing League champion and the multi-time Bahrain Circuit Pro Modified champion. Khalid also a NHRA Pro Modified World Champion, as well as a 4-time national event winner in NHRA Top Fuel competition. Up against Ryan Griffin out of Olympia, Washington, trying to play Giant Killer in round number 1 of competition to the runner-up at Doorwarz last year for Khalid Belushi. So Griffin, who's got some solid passes in back-to-back runs, getting down the racetrack. The crew just in the wheelie bar height, making sure that that is all good to go at the back of that 67 Mustang. As Khalid Belushi trying to get down the Lordco Auto Parts lane, again with the lane choice, the higher qualified car over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. Justin Bond already changed out of the driver's suit and up at the line, getting ready to watch Khalid Belushi go down the racetrack. Justin, with all the cars and family members that he's had running, has looked a little bit like John Force this weekend, getting some serious mileage on the scooter, running back and forth as Belushi is pre-stage. Here comes Griffin. And you're going to hear the boost build in the Mustang over here on the TCS side of the racetrack. Red light for Griffin, and it was there for the taking as Belushi, a 4:33 with a 447 miles an hour off and on at pedaling. Griffin was pedaling, but he went 006 red on the tree, red by 6 thousandths of a second, as Griffin knew he had to take a shot at it. And Belushi, who had to pedal it, could have been there for the taking, but moves on in to round number 2 of competition. So a close call there for Cal Belushi as we get ready for our next pair of cars here in West Coast Pro Modified Competition. It is Tom Riethmeyer in the 1971 Mach 1 Mustang over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. And Tom, used to be unique that he had one of the few 1971 Mach 1 Mustangs in Pro Modified Competition, but quite a few Pro Modified competitors kind of making a move over that. Chip King and a few others electing to run that body style, becoming more and more common in 8th mile PDRA competition up against Dave Kowalski. Kowalski making his best ever run in competition in qualifying with a 389. That'll put Kowalski in the number 6 qualifying position, taking on your number 11 qualifier in Tom Riethmeyer over there in the Ford-powered Ford Mustang. 526 cubic inches of Ford power with that Root supercharged setup for Riethmeyer, and also a Root supercharged Hemi for Dave Kowalski in that C7 Corvette, which was one of the first C7 vets that was built for Pro Modified competition with that body style, as Dave Kowalski used to run that car in Top Sportsman and has really taken the turn, stepping up the program with that beautiful red vet up against Tom Riethmeyer, who's been in the 4.0s this weekend. Kowalski again running in the 380s, so Riethmeyer trying to step up the program here, but we've seen some close races and already an upset here in round number 1 of competition, so Riethmeyer trying to knock out the lower qualified cars. We get ready to go for Kowalski and Riethmeyer in round number 1. The Mustang getting a piece of the fence almost down there at the top end, and Dave Kowalski looking like a sprint car out there, sliding all over the racetrack. 497 with a 164 miles an hour, and using up all of the possible real estate here at Mission Raceway Park. It does look like Riethmeyer got a piece of the wall over here in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. You can see the mark in the right side lane if you're looking from the pit side of things, where the Mustang side slapped the fence as Riethmeyer tried to coax that thing down the racetrack. 740 for Riethmeyer, coasting through at 53 miles an hour as both cars straight up into tire shakes, smoking the tires on the hit, and both drivers on and off the gas and all over the racetrack. But Dave Kowalski comes out as the winner in that one. And Jerry Lucky, I know you were watching alongside. That was a wild one and showed both how much those drivers wanted to get that round win and advance on into round number 2.
Boy, you know, Pro Mod has always been a class that's just on the razor edge of sane and insane. And he managed to just hang on to that enough where he didn't do, I don't think, a whole lot of damage, but he definitely got in the wall. And it's a good thing the wall was there because it kept him going to the top end in the right direction.
Again, a glancing blow for the Mustang over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side for Tom Riethmeyer. You can see that the MRP safety team down there just check things over, make sure that everything is A-OK in the Mustang, and help assist Tom's car off of the top end over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Tough break for The racer out of Sherwood Park, Alberta, and that beautiful Mach 1 Mustang, again, just getting a piece of the Lordco Auto Parts wall over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. So here we go, the final pair. We have a competition single after this. Firing up for round number 1 of Pro Modified, Tony Moretto. The TCS side of the racetrack up against Garrett Richards in the Lordco lane. Garrett Richards out at Tacoma, the Walt Austin Racing Boss Hemi-powered Shelby Mustang, getting backed up from the burnout that has been solidly in the 390s all weekend, and comes into this pairing as the higher qualified car in the lower qualified car in the number 7 spot up against Moretto. Qualified in the number 10 position with 4-0 run last night, saving his best run for last this weekend as he backs up the Bel Air. Moretto out of Kelowna, and Richards, the Washington State driver that's been out of Doorwarz competition for the last few years. Two-time Doorwarz winner, and again coming back for the first time since 2019 to Mission Raceway Park for this weekend's racing action. So the final purge in the nitrous system for Moretto and the screw-blown Boss Hemi getting ready to go down the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack in Garrett Richards. Try to go for a three-peat of Doorwarz wins this weekend as he gets guided into the beams. And Richards taking that Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. Also, that gives him a little bit better visibility when it comes to staging that race car, as he doesn't have to look around the supercharger that protrudes with that massive injector hat on that Shelby Mustang. It's Tony Moretto in the 900 cubic inch nitrous assisted 55 Chevy, trying to take out Garrett Richards, the number 7 qualifier. Moretto shuts it off, 393 with a 6 at 197 miles an hour. Garrett Richards moves on in to round number 2 of competition here for the West Coast Pro Modifieds as we get ready for the final Pro Mod in round number 1 of competition. And it will be Steve Horn. As you get a quick look at the instant replay up there on the big screen, we'll get ready for Steve Horn. Again, he was supposed to go up against Steve Nicholson and Steve's 63 split window Corvette, but unfortunately Steve not making the call for round number 1 of competition. So Steve Horn will get the competition single, as you get a great look up there on the big screen and on the Lordco Auto Parts live stream, and at that Root supercharged combination for Steve as they get that thing fired up. JS Power Sports Willys that again was extensively reworked from a little bit of an incident at the Lang Loafers Old Time Drags last year here at Mission Raceway Park, and that car making its first full passes here this weekend since getting the rebuild. Steve and the team working hard and trying to join the JS Power Sports 57 Chevy. Jay Severson here in round number 2 of competition. So Steve Horn going to get the competition single, and he is going to face, in round number 2, Justin Bond. So not an easy matchup ahead of the red 41 Willys for Horn, as he's going to try and lay down a representative run here in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack for your number 8 qualifier. So here we go. Horn turning on the top bulb, getting ready to light the bottom bulb in the final car, round number 1. Horn stays with it right over to the center line into the 396 with a 491 miles an hour. As Steve again a little bit out of the groove as you get a look at that in the instant replay. That car driving over towards the center line, and Steve staying with it right into the traps, as even as that Tire gets completely out of the prep portion of the racetrack, right up on the center line, but still drives it through to a 396 with a 191 miles an hour, and that's going to finish things off for West Coast Pro Modifieds. Well, here we go with round number 2 of Pro Modified eliminations here for the West Coast Pro Mods, and taking on the Corvette of Dave Kowalski is the 57 Bel Air, the bunker junker for J.R. Lazick. The racer out of Kelowna up against Kowalski from Fort St. John. In that C7 Corvette, Kowalski, the winner of a wild pairing in round number 1 against Tom Riethmeyer, who got into the fence on the right side of the racetrack. Kowalski able to pedal his way to a 497 with a 7 at 164 miles an hour. Lazick coming in, having run a 379.7 at 200 miles an hour in round number 1 in that 57 Chevy. The two supercharged combinations, slightly different blower for Kowalski. He's running the traditional root style supercharger up against a screw blown 57 Chevy of J.R. Lazick, who's going to try and take out this round 2 win. Kowalski, though, is going to have something to say about it over in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack, and running career best laps times all weekend up against Lazick, who's been consistently in the 370s. The finish line, it's J.R. Lazick, 382.6, 199 miles an hour, 393 with an 8. The advantage on the starting line was Dave Kowalski for Daycal Ventures, had an 023 light to J.R. Lazick's 067, and a 393 with an 8 at 185.41 miles an hour. Gets the job done for, well, was almost good enough to get the job done for Dave Kowalski. Getting the job done, though, on the TCS side of the racetrack. 382.6, 199 miles an hour for J.R. Lazick for the racer out of Kelowna. Moving on into the semifinals for West Coast Pro Modified. Tension in the pits, tension in the pits. Pro Mod Bike, we need you to the lanes. Pro Mod Bike, we need you guys to the lanes. And attention to the pits, attention to the pits, the Junior Street rerun. You guys are on standby. Junior Street rerun from round number 1. You guys are on standby. So we've seen J.R. Lazick move on into round number 3, the semifinals here for West Coast Pro Modified. But here comes Khaled Belushi up against Garrett Richards in round number 2. So Khaled Belushi, who came into eliminations as a number 2 qualifier, got lucky when Ryan Griffin red-lighted in the Mustang, went 006 red in his first round pairing, as Belushi had to pedal the Camaro over in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. And Garrett Richards, who has lane choice going into this second round matchup, electing to go down the Lordco Auto Parts lane in that Shelby Mustang, again with the Ford Boss Hemi with the massive injector sticking out of the hood for Richards, that screw supercharger, and it's also a screw supercharged combination for Khaled Belushi for the Bar 1 Racing Team. And Khaled, a multi-time Bahrain Circuit champion in Pro Modified competition, and their drag strip in Bahrain, directly beside the F1 track. A beautiful facility that they have that I believe is still NHRA sanctioned. Needless to say, it's the only NHRA sanctioned drag strip in Bahrain. So Garrett Richards out of Tacoma, Washington, over there in the 2012 Shelby Mustang, getting ready to try and take out Belushi. Side by side to the stripe, and it is going to be Khaled Belushi getting to the line first. 378 with a 4, 203 miles an hour to a losing 396 with a 197 miles an hour for Garrett Richards over there for the two-time Doorwarz winner. So Garrett Richards done for the weekend over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane, and Khalid Al-Balushi continuing on for Bahrain 1 Racing and moving on in to the semifinals, and his teammate is going to look to do the same thing here in this next matchup. So it looks like Justin Bond electing to take the Lordco Auto Parts lane, as seems like pretty much every other quicker car is chosen to go down. Bond coming into this round of eliminations, having run a 373.7 so far, low ET of eliminations. In round number 1, he had a bye run in that first round of competition by virtue of being the number 1 qualifier in that Camaro, facing off against Steve Horn in the JS Power Sports 41 Willys. Horn having a competition single to get into round number 2, still put down at 396 with a 591 miles an hour. Side-by-side smoky burnouts, and once again the 2 supercharged combinations and the TCS side of the racetrack. Horn running the conventional route-style supercharger for the 41 Willys that, again, has been extensively reworked from when Steve and the JS Power Sports gang first got this race car, and up against Justin Bond over there, a 6-time NHRA National Event winner in the NHRA Fuel Tech Pro Modified category, with 3 of those wins coming this year alone. For the driver from Mission that's been on a roll, of course, has run a whole variety of different race cars here at Mission Raceway Park. Everything from and a tractor. Throw that in. And again, getting some serious miles on scooter this weekend, running around, but I know Justin really enjoying racing at his home track. So it looks like something, again, weird happening with the Christmas tree as they are looking at sending Justin Bond down there. So Steve Horn idles down the racetrack, and it looks like Justin Bond is going to be on a single pass in the Camaro into the semifinals. And he's going to shut it off. So problems there. You could hear something a little bit funky in the motor department. 683 for Justin Bond at 61 miles an hour. And again, Steve Horn idling his way down the racetrack in the 41 Willys. And Justin Bond, again, moving on into round number 2. Rather, moving on from round number 2 into the semifinals of eliminations here as we get ready for what looks to be the final pair of Pro Modifieds. Just shy of the water box, it's Ryan Hayward over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack, and in the TCS lane, Jay Severston in the 57 Chevy. So looks like we're going to get ready to go here for the pairing between Jay Severston and Ryan Hayward over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. Again, Jay Severson punching out Scott Blake in round number 1. Severson with his best run of the weekend so far, a 4:04 with a 190 miles an hour for the 57 Chevy. up against Ryan Hayward with the nitrous combo for the 69 Camaro out of Marysville, Washington. So Jay Severson getting ready to back that 57 Bel Air up from the burnout that is known as Black Betty, that Jay has had for just over 10 years now. Hard to believe that car has been running here at Mission Raceway Park for as long as it has been. Is Ryan Hayward over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane, the quicker car coming into this second round of eliminations. Hayward running a 385 with a 1 to take out Steve Goddard's losing 449 with a 6 and 143 miles an hour in round number 1 of competition. Again, Ryan recently converting from running Outlaw 10.5 into Pro Modified competition. As you can see, he's going to have to go through that whole purging process to make sure that the nitrous system is primed and ready to go. As Jay Severson clearing out the motor, as both crew members looking across at each other, waiting for the signal to bring their respective drivers into the staging beams. As a few more spurts of the nitrous system for Hayward, as Severson still waiting to bring it into the beams. Again, you're hearing Severson blipping the throttle, keeping that motor cleaned out and getting ready to bring the Spruce Supercharged 57 Chevy in for the final pair of West Coast Pro Modifieds in round number 2. Who's going to the semis? We're about to find out. Good drag race, but at the top end, it's going to be Ryan Hayward moving on to the semifinal with a 386 with a 295 miles an hour to a 395 with a 394 miles an hour for Severson, his best run of the weekend. Unfortunately, coming up about a car length short, as you saw that in the Rocket Coatings finish line cam up there on the big screen. So Hayward in the Rare Morrison nitrous-powered Camaro out of Marysville, Washington, the Code Blue Camaro going on into the semifinals here at Doorwarz. And so you can see down there in the water box, we have a rerun from round number 2 of the West Coast Pro Modifieds. A little anomaly happening on the starting line that saw Steve Horn have to idle down the TCS side of the racetrack, and Justin Bond also clicking it off early. So both these cars coming back to rerun round number 2 and see who moves on into the semifinals. So Justin Bond, your number 1 qualifier, again running a 368 in qualifying in that Bahrain 1 Camaro, the 1968 Camaro over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. And Steve Horn, the other half of this battle, trying to get into, and Horn is out of the car. Oh, another tough break for Steve Horn, who the car did the burnout and then it did not come back. So Horn is out of the race car. They're going to have Justin Bond, by the looks of things, on a single over there in the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaros. So tough break for Steve Horn. As you get a look at the ladder, the winner of this facing Ryan Hayward in the semifinals is Khaled Al-Belushi and Jordan Lazick going at it. The other half of the ladder here for the semis. It looks like, again, Justin Bond having that single pass now into the final remaining spot in the semifinals. So again, Steve Horn has got clear over to a safe distance out of the race car, so they will run Justin Bond down the track as a single. Justin Bond straight down the Lordco Auto Parts lane with a 375 with a 202 miles an hour. So we'll get Steve Horn's machine retrieved from the TCS side of the racetrack. Tough break for Steve and the gang for JS Power Sports and that beautiful 1941 Willys. And Justin Bond will move on to the semifinals with a picture-perfect run over in the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack. And And a 375 with a 4, 202 miles an hour. Semifinals for West Coast Pro Modified have now been decided. We'll get ready to go. Canada West Door Slammer competition, round number 3 for Paradise Homes coming up. So that first pair getting lined up and ready to go here for the semifinals. J.R. Lazick in the Bunker Junker 57 Chevy up against Khalid Belushi in the Bahrain 1 Racing Camaro. The modern Camaro body for Khalid over there in the Lordco Auto Parts side of things. Belushi running a 378 with a 4 at 203 miles an hour to take out Garrett Richards with a 396 with a 4 in his losing effort. Jordan Lazick beating Dave Kowalski. Kowalski running a 393 with an 8 on his losing run. Lazick running a 382 with a 6 at 199 miles an hour to get into the semifinals as we are fired up and ready to go. 2 screw-blown combinations on either side of the racetrack. The Bahrain 1 Camaro and the 24/7 compression 57 Bel Air. You can see the 2 different approaches in the burnout department. Khaled's sitting and letting the tires spin up before letting that thing roll as Lazick rolls straight through the water box and hits the throttle as they back them up. We'll see who goes into the final rounds. Both of these drivers have been in a Doorwarz final before, with both of them ending up as the runner-up, and they want nothing more than to change that. As the Bahrain 1 team after last year, again bringing the NHRA Legal Pro Mods to the Outlaw Pro Mod format, and stepping things up big time this year. Khalid has made the tweaks as well as the crew and the crew chief down there for the Bahrain 1 racing team. They changed the gearing in that car to wake it up a little bit, changed the pulley on the blower as well to step things up in the boost department. And J.R. Lazick already has 1 win under his belt this weekend, took out the full-blown frenzy from Pacific Raceways, again in that delayed final round in the 4th and final qualifying session last night here at Mission Raceway Park for the Titanium Strip, as both crew members getting ready to guide their respective drivers into the beams. Getting a nice shot up there on the Lordco Auto Parts live stream and the big screen here at Mission Raceway Park, the side of the Bunker Junker for J.R. Lazick, who has that wild patina wrap on that machine and is trying to take it into the final round. Khalid Belushi trying to stop him over there in the Lordco Auto Parts lane with both cars pre-staged and ready to go now. Both cars sideways, and it's J.R. Lazick going to the final in a Pill Fest. So J.R. Lazick, watch the replay on this one. Both drivers getting up on the wheel. Huge tire shake for Lazick. Belushi doing a great job to keep that car in its lane, but having to shut off. Still 402 with a 776 miles an hour for Jordan Lazick, who is on and off the throttle, driving that thing around. That small tire racing experience coming into play there with the Big Tire Pro Mod is Khalid Belushi going out in the semifinals with a losing 443 with a 120 miles an hour, having to shut it off early. And now we're going to decide who Jordan Lazick is going to face in the final rounds of Doorwarz. Ryan Hayward versus Justin Bond in the second half of the semi. So Justin Bond, again, has been on a roll so far in 2023. Wants nothing more than to win his hometown race for Doorwarz here at Mission Raceway Park. And Ryan Hayward, who came up as the runner-up in the full-blown frenzy final last night here at Mission Raceway Park. 2 different combinations. We saw the 2 screw supercharged cars in the second half, or rather the first half of the semifinal. And in this one, you got the big cubic inch nitrous setup for Ryan Hayward, 959 cubic inches of rare Morrison power, and a whole lot of spray up against another screw supercharged machine in Justin Bond's 1968 Camaro. Bond over there, all the supporters with Bahrain 1 Racing putting their hopes on the car in the Lordco Auto Parts lane. A driver out of mission for JBS Equipment, Rad Torque Systems, S&T and TD Steel. Here we go. This time it's Hayward who shuts off, and Justin Bond is going to put down another 375. This one a 375 with a 5 at 202 miles an hour. So Justin Bond will go on to face to face the winner of the Khaled Belushi Jordan Lazick battle. Jordan Lazick in the Bunker Junker 57 Chevy. Again, Lazick taking out Belushi, so it is Bond versus Lazick in the final round here at Mission Raceway Park for Doorwarz 11. The two screw-blown cars going at it, the battle of the supercharged machines. That 57 Chevy, the Bunker Junker, going to go up against Justin Bond's 1968 Camaro to decide who takes home the $10,000 prize. And I know the racer from Kelowna, Jordan Lazick's going to be up on the wheel for this one, and so is Justin Bond as they try and take home the Doorwarz crown. And one thing's for sure, we'll have a new Doorwarz champion here in 2023. Both drivers looking for their first Doorwarz win heading into the final round. Oh, we see a turquoise 1957 Chevy Bel Air into the lanes, which means we are just a few moments away from the final of Doorwarz 2023, the 11th edition, and Justin Bond getting ready to do battle against J.R. Lazick, the crew getting that thing buttoned back up and ready to go. And props to Justin for giving him a little bit extra time to make sure that we have this great race to finish off this weekend. And I know it's going to be a battle of somebody getting their first Doorwarz win is going to be the end result here of this final round.
Interesting watching on the screen. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will be seeing this, the big screen here at Mission being disassembled right now. But you see the two teams sitting there having a chat between each other, and it's fascinating that, there was a lot going on between rounds, and here we are. It's going to be settled on the racetrack in about a run that'll last under 5 seconds. So I see all the drivers getting their gear on and getting inside the vehicles, and so we're going to be racing here in just a couple of seconds. So if you're out and about, you make sure you want to head back over to your seat somewhere where you can see the racetrack.
Well, for those watching the live stream, you're going to get a look at the Pro Modified ladder here. We'll give you a quick run through as well. There you can see, again, the final round, Justin Bond versus Jordan Lazick, and Lazick in the semifinals taking out Khaled Belushi, and then Lazick also taking out Dave Kowalski and Keith Korecki there in the Battle of Kelowna in the first round for Lazick. Then looking at Bond's side of the ladder, Justin having that bye run, still running through with a strong run, 370 seconds, been the name of the game there, having to rerun the second round against Steve Horn, again coming out with another 370 pass. And you guessed it, in the semifinals, another 370 for Justin Bond, taking out Ryan Hayward to get into this final round.
I get a sense that Justin Bond's car has been performing in sort of the same fashion that John DeYoung's car has. It has been pretty solid on every single pass, getting down track at a time that they are really comfortable with and sort of at the top of the field.
$10,000 on the line here, and it is going to be a battle. And As we pointed out earlier, the drivers might be different, but just like last year, a 24/7 compression versus Bahrain 1 racing matchup. Dean Bettinson, who has a part in the Bunker Junker and that 57 Chevy, was the Doorwarz winner last year in his 24/7 compression Camaro, and he took out Khalid Belushi in one of the Bahrain 1 racing Camaros, and now it is a 24/7 compression Bahrain 1 matchup again. Again, the player's a little bit different in the driver's seat, but getting ready to go with Justin Bond electing to take that Lordco Auto Parts lane. Again, Bond having lane choice coming into it, with Lazic winning out in a pedal fest, a wild semi-final appearance against Khalid Belushi, as Jordan Lazic preventing an all Bahrain 1 racing final round, but Justin Bond trying to put the Bunker Junker on the trailer and wind up in victory lane. And, well, Jordan Lazic's thinking the exact same thing. Love to see that Bahrain 1 Camaro up on the trailer and Jordan in victory lane as we get ready to finish off Doorwarz 11 here at Mission Raceway Park. So here we go for the final time. Cars come to life. This weekend is Justin Bond and Jordan Lazic kick off their burnouts. Lazic has also been a 370 player throughout the weekend. 378, his best run. Running big speed, best we've seen in West Coast Pro Modified competition. 208 miles an hour on his first qualifying pass of the weekend in that turquoise Bel Air, getting backed up from the burnout. And again, Justin Bond, your number 1 qualifier. Both cars coming from the top half of the qualifying ladder and working their way through the field. As in just a few moments, we will find out who's going to take home that 10K for the first time. Will it be Jordan Lazic, who's made it to a final round here before in 2021, or will it be Justin Bond over there on the Lordco Auto Parts side of the racetrack? Bond has also made it to the final round as part of Shane Molinari, who came up here to Mission Raceway Park, made it to the finals, only to fall to Garrett Richards, and would love nothing more than to get this Doorwarz win. Last person to come in his way is Jordan Lazic, as Lazic is pre-staged. Here we go, the final of Doorwarz 11 for Pro Modified. And it's all Justin Bond, another 370 run. This one a 373 with a 6, 202 miles an hour to cap off a dominating weekend and a valiant effort for Jordan Lazic and the crew out of Kelowna, coming up just shy with that 441.9 early shutoff, and they threw everything that they had at that Bahrain 1 racing team, but Justin Bond coming out on top and getting the Doorwarz win.
Absolutely spectacular run, too. Straight, true, and consistent as always. That car has, under Justin's foot, been down track in just amazing fashion.
So that is going to do it for Doorwarz 11. Justin Bond getting the win. You'll look on the live stream at the instant replay, and it was Justin, an 014 light in a Pro Modified. 099 on the tree for Lazic, so safe to say Justin was ready for this one, amped up, and got the jump on the tree and managed to pull away a .938 60 foot for Justin Bond and a 101 60 foot for Jordan Lazic, as Justin Bond will take the win, his first Doorwarz crown, here to finish things off.